The Last Lesson by Alphonse Daudet. I started for school very late that morning and was in a great dread of scolding. For a moment I thought of running away and spending the day outdoors. It was so warm, so bright. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods. It was all so tempting. But I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. When I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin. I thought to myself, what could be the matter now? As I hurried, the blacksmith called after me, "Don't go so fast. You'll get to your school in plenty of time." I thought they were making fun of me. I reached Mr. Hamill's little garden all out of breath. Usually, when school began, there was a great bustle, which could be heard out in the street. Lessons repeated in unison, the opening and closing of desks, and the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. But now it was all so still. I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen. But, of course, that day, everything was as quiet as Sunday morning. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places, and Mr. Hamill walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how blushed and how frightened I was. But nothing happened. Mr. Hamill saw me and said very kindly, "Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you." I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and a little black silk cap all embroidered, that he never wore except on inspection in prize days. Besides, the whole school seemed so strange and solemn. The thing that surprised me most was to see on the back benches. They were always empty, but today the village people sitting quietly like ourselves. Old Hauser with his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, even. Everybody looked sad. While I was wondering about it all, Mr. Hamill mounted his chair, and in the same grave and gentle tone which he had used to me, said, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive." What a thunderclap those words were to me. Oh, the wretches! That was what they had put up at the town hall. My last French lesson, why, I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn any more. I must stop there then. Oh, how sorry I was for not learning my lessons, for seeking birds' eggs, or going sliding on the Saar. My books that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry. My grammar and my history of the saints were old friends now that I couldn't give up. And Mr. Hamill, too, the idea that he was going away, and I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was. Poor man, it was in honor of his last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes. Then, from one thing to another, Mr. Hamill went on to talk of the French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language in the world, the clearest, the most logical, and we must guard it among us and never forget. Because when a people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. Then he opened a grammar and read us our lesson. I was amazed to see how well I understood it. All he said seemed so easy, so easy. I think, too, that I had never really listened so carefully, and that he had never explained with so much patience. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away, and to put it all into our heads at one stroke. That day, Mr. Hamill had new copies for us, written in a beautiful round hand. France, Alsace, France, Alsace. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rod at the top of our desks. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work, and how quiet it was. The only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the littlest ones, who worked right on tracing their fish hooks, as if that was French too. On the roof, the pigeons cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw Mr. Hamill sitting motionless in his chair, and gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. Fancy! For 40 years he had been there in the same place, with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him. Just like that. Only the desks and benches had been worn smooth. The walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hop-vine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof. How it must have been broken his heart to leave it all, poor man, to hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their trunks, for they must leave the country the next day. He had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last. After the writing, we had a lesson in history, and then the babies chanted their ba, bee, bye, bo, boo. Down there at the back of the room, old Hauser had on his spectacles, and holding his primer in both hands, spelled the letters with them. You could see that he, too, was crying. His voice trembled with emotion, and it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh, but we all wanted to cry, too. Oh, how well I remember that last lesson. All at once the church clock struck 12. Then the Angelus. At the same moment the trumpets of the Prussians, returning from drill, sounded under the windows. Mr. Hamill stood up, very pale, in his chair. I never saw him look so tall. My friends, he said, but something choked him. He could not go on. Then he turned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and, bearing on with all his might, he wrote as large as he could, "Viva la France!" Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall, and, without a word, he made a gesture to us with his hand. "School is dismissed. You may go."